Oh, nice new hat, Fern. Are
You
you
like
trying to
that?
show that off? Is that what was happening?
Yeah, because this is the video version. Oh wait, no, we don't post the video version of this. So
Wait, talk to me about that hat. I like it. A little
this
CrossFit Rife action.
this hat was a gift from my wife. It's from a company called Holtz. So it's spelled Holtz, Holtz Leather Company. Um,
Oh, is that
but
the
yeah,
one that was at the games?
I literally have no idea. But she bought
Yeah.
it for me. I have another hat from another company, but it's like they got the leather patch with our logo on the front. It's pretty slick. I like it.
So is that a leather CrossFit Rife patch on the front?
Yeah, so the leather, it's like a brown leather with the
Yeah.
black like I forgot what it's called. It's like not burned in, but yeah, like burned.
Like etched in the CrossFit and the Rife look like almost like what you would do to a cow. What's that word?
Branding, yeah.
Branding. Yeah.
But yeah,
And
she got it for me for I think it was like a late birthday present. Maybe it was a Valentine's Day present. I think by the time I got here, it was a Valentine's Day present. So
I think when you're married and whatnot, as long as you are, you just give gifts and you're like, I probably missed something.
I mean,
Like
I'm the worst. I'm the worst.
this makes up for the
Yeah.
last 7 birthdays I missed. So where can
Um,
people get that? I mean, not that people are watching this, but and we have no affiliation with it. It's just a really cool looking hat.
Not yet,
What's the
but they
company?
should sponsor the show. They should.
What is it?
You know, it's called Holtz, Holtz, Holtz Leather Company.
Cool. Well, good present, Jess. I like it. So did you put that on expecting me to have a reaction? Because we
No,
typically do. You just
no,
put putting it
I
on.
know, but here's the thing. I got it Sunday night, and I wore it last night to the gym, and then I wore it this morning, and now I'm to the point where I'm like, we're gonna have to order these for the gym or do pre-orders because everybody wants one. Like I've gotten like 10 comments on it, and it's like I never get that many comments on anything.
Yeah, it's probably like a company that is expensive because you typically do one off, so you probably do a pre-order on that. Yeah, I noticed
It's
you.
like yeah, but it's like I think they're like $30.
Yeah, so you're not going to make money. It's just really to
Yeah,
let
it's
the
branding.
gym.
As long as I don't lose money, I'm fine. And if I have 15 people wearing hats, then I'm good.
You're branding with branded hats.
There you go. Branding with branding.
So I noticed you do the bill. You curve the bill. Is that because you're white? Like you have to do that?
Uh, I'm white Hispanic. My last name is Fernandez.
I always
No,
forget that you're Hispanic. By the way, even though your last name is like the most Hispanic, I always because what's your do you know like how much of you is Hispanic versus just like straight up Caucasian?
I'm a second generation immigrant. My dad's from Cuba.
He immigrated here
Yeah, yeah, like in the early '60s, like
like on a
just as they immigrated because of the Castro regime was beginning to take over, and they got out of there like pretty just kind of barely. And my dad, it's a pretty interesting story. My dad kind of like I think when he was about 8 years old, they took a plane flight to Mexico, and then him and his dad crossed the Rio Grande together. And I remember my dad telling me the story. He's like, basically, his dad said, "You go that way. I'm going to go this way and find border patrol."
your your dad sounds way more interesting than you. Do you think he would take your spot on the show?
He's a pretty smart guy. We look a lot alike, so I'm not sure people would tell the difference.
um, so what is the rule on the on last question about hats? What is the rule on the brim these days? Do you go curved? Like I noticed you do that because you do it at the games as well with our judges hats versus the flat bill.
I mean, I don't know that there's a rule. That's just how I grew up when I played baseball.
Yeah,
Like
same.
now the straight bill is like in, but I can't bring myself to do a straight bill. That's very much a West Coast thing. But if you're from the South, like a curved bill has been more apt for, or that's not the right word, more common than the straight bill. Although when I watch LSU baseball players, there are a lot of straight bills on that thing.
Yeah,
I just can't do it. I don't know why. Like I don't feel like it fits my demeanor attitude.
I, I think it's an age thing.
Probably.
I think you get to
Although
like
no, I think it's a West Coast thing. I know plenty of dudes that are older than me who are like skaters, surfers that are just West Coast guys that are straight bill all day long.
yeah, but aren't they just sad? It's just sad.
That's an opinion.
No, because I know a handful of those people are mutual friends. I imagine we're talking about like the Pat Barbers, the Austin Bajibings.
Uh, Pat wears some funny hats though. I've seen him wear some hats.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't. I mean, like you're a dad now, bro. I guess you could do that, but
trying to be the hip dad.
yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about it. Our latest episode of dropping in, episode 5. at Hammer Driven Fitness went up yesterday, and it's gotten rave reviews. People want to know more about it, and we did 10 episodes. I don't want to speak for you, but to me, this was one of the most fun episodes we did, and certainly the most unique episodes we did.
I would agree with both those statements. I think it was fun because of its uniqueness, because there was a little miscommunication on our part about like what class we were coming to. And in hindsight, I think that created a better content for people to watch anyway, because we got to do something pretty unique that probably would have been a lot more challenging for Steph to do if there was 10 to 15 people in a later class in the day.
Yeah, for those of you watching the episode, if you haven't already, Hammer Driven Fitness, in Raleigh is first of all, it's a gorgeous gym, amazingly spotless and clean, thanks to Steph's significant other who takes great care of the box. But we had 10 boxes in 3 days and 4 days, and somewhere along the way there was just a miscommunication in time. So Steph was expecting us to come in later. She had told her entire community about it. We show up at noon and we're just like, hey, we're here. And we realized there was, something went wrong. We didn't have the opportunity to come back later that night because we had like 2 more boxes to go to. And rather than skipping out, we said, hey, somewhere along the way, the 3 of us decided that Steph would take us through a workout as adaptive athletes. One member wound up showing up as well. I don't remember. Do you remember her name? I'm sure it's in the episode.
Ooh, I don't.
But she dealt with our shenanigans. But
she was great.
Man, she was great. A lot of fun. And Steph was just awesome. It's not always easy coaching a 3-person class, right? You need to bring the energy, which Steph did. But also, I was not listening.
You were a nightmare.
If you had to, you have Logan, Chappie, and then me. What's the order of best behaved to worst behaved?
You were at the bottom. Like my 1-year-old, my 6-year-old are better behaved than you were in that class. Like I was borderline worried that I was like, this is gonna be a shit episode because this guy can't act like even a teenager right now.
Even a 1-year-old.
Even a 1-year-old. No, but I think no, she did well with it, and just for context, we both know Steph, so where we didn't know any of the other gym owners for the most part, so there was it was a little bit more loose there, which made it more fun. So you've known her for a long time. I don't know if I did her level 1. I for sure did her level 2 though, here at my gym.
How'd she do?
She did great. I mean, like she's a good coach. Like she's confident. She knows she knows how to coach. She's just has to do it in her own style because she's in a wheelchair, and that presents its own unique challenges that most of us will never even have to think about.
Well, and I think seeing her in action, it's like so many coaches like, I can't do a muscle up, I can't coach it, or I don't squat perfectly, I can't coach it. The girl's coaching from a wheelchair, which means we're getting rid of 95% of any visual cues.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she could do something overhead. She's got to wheel around during class where we have the luxury of just walking. And not just getting from person to person, but maybe navigating inside or outside of a rig or the equipment on the floor. So really that just comes down to like, what's your excuse as a coach? Like you need to figure out a way to be better, because and she's not the only one. I mean, Kevin Ogar's on the CrossFit Seminar staff.
Mm-hmm.
Stouty's an amazing coach. And these are just the athletes we know in a wheelchair, but any of those adaptive athletes are,
we worked out with a lot of them at Neuse River, and one of the episodes that is yet to air at John's place, and some of those athletes are coaches there.
Yeah, I mean, both from a coaching perspective and from an athlete perspective, this episode was super eye-opening to me, which is why I was so excited for it to come out. We purposely put it in the middle of the season as kind of like the midway point. That Neuse River episode is our season finale, so in another 5 weeks or so. But yeah, this was such a great episode. It was, I mean, eye-opening to me from just getting around in a wheelchair to figuring out how to adapt the workouts. And I'll let you do this, Fern. Explain the difference between adapting and scaling.
So adapting is somebody who is dealing with an either a permanent or temporary, we'll call it disability slash injury. Like you, depending on like what bucket you want to throw them in, it kind of doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Scaling is a little bit more along the lines of really all I'm doing is I'm looking at like the three big ticket items. Like I'm going to scale load, volume, and then potentially the movement. But if you're talking about an adaptive athlete, this is somebody who is doesn't necessarily just need to modify what they're doing in the workout. They have what I would probably best describe as like modifications that they have to deal with in their daily life. Like they are in a wheelchair, or they use crutches or canes, or they have um, uh, only, or they might have only 3 sound limbs or 2 sound limbs or something like that. So that's more along the lines of an adaptive athlete. It's, you know, it can be congenital or it can be due to some sort of acute injury in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and I think big picture, the point is like if you're using the word scaling to an adaptive athlete, I don't know that it would be offensive, but it's frustrating to say the least because they're adapting the workout to suit their needs. They're not necessarily scaling. Let's take
Yeah, because it could be harder.
it's most definitely harder, but I mean, it could be the same weight. Kevin Ogar, for example, doesn't scale the loads. He's stronger than us. It's just that he's scaling. I'm sorry, he's adapting the workout to suit the fact that he's in his chair.
Yeah. And they talk about a little bit about that in the adaptive course, uh, about terms that you use and how you say things. And we talked about this before about trying to avoid saying things like if you don't have pull-ups,
Right.
and
You
you can
you
say
do a good
things.
job of that.
Yeah, and you can say things that would be a little bit more along the lines of if we're still working on our pull-ups, this is what we're going to do today. So and
That's
then the difference between you don't say an impaired limb. You would talk about their sound limb. So meaning I have a sound limb and I have a like an unsound limb, meaning like I have either I'm missing that limb or it's injured either permanently or temporarily. So I've got one sound arm and we're gonna use that arm for, so it's not necessarily addressing what they're adapting because of, and more so addressing what they're going to do, which is good coaching advice anyway. It's like it's very similar to what you and I deal with at the level twos, which is somebody who cues by saying, hey, don't round your back. Well, the better cue would be, hey, pull your chest up, or drop your hips, or give them some sort of directive. And it's kind of the same thing. Is like you don't necessarily want to talk to their disability. You want to talk to their ability and address what they're going to do, not necessarily what they can't do.
Yeah, and I think it's like anything, the world's a little bit soft and sensitive these days. So the best we can do to be proactive and use the right verbiage, the better it is. And like we've said, let's talk about it. In this episode, I worked out in a wheelchair. You worked out as if you were a one-armed athlete. Obviously, you
Mhm.
still had 2 arms, but you only used one. And we started the workout with a back squat. So
Mhm.
full disclosure, I back squatted, right? I went into the wheelchair for the Metcon, but you back squatted with only one arm. What did you learn from that?
It was really challenging. There's a lot of things that you don't have to consider simply by being able to be able to put both hands on the bar. The adjustments you have to make for counterbalance, where you put your hands, how you now have to adjust the load. Because think about it, typically if I'm on a back squat and I'm pulling down on the bar, but now I remove one of those hands, now I've got uneven force or effort applied to this what was what was actually not previous a lever that is now a lever, right? Because I'm pulling on one end, it's going to pull the other end up to the other side. So um, different things like that, and you just have to adjust your body position pretty hard. And then very similar on the rower, that when you row with one arm, it changes. There's now like a different variation of torque because you're trying to adjust by pulling on one side, and I want to try to keep myself square. So um, it was challenging. I mean, I don't remember what I used, but I don't think I put 225 on the bar. I want to say I was like in the 185 range for a back squat, and I back squat a whole lot more than that. I mean, it's nothing crazy, but 185 was incredibly challenging because of the balance issue.
Yeah, we all know when you were a Division I basketball player, you back squatted.
Did we talk about regionals 2012 though?
So, so something else that was really impressive about this experience was as the coach, Steph really had to know not just how to coach people on these movements and the cues and the points of performance and the faults, but then how to address the different injuries and how she would adapt it. And, so for example, the one thing I remember is when we started the workout and the rowing, she was giving me these cues for the rower. And of course, she's in a wheelchair, so it probably makes a little sense with her. But, she had to think about how am I going to coach this guy in a wheelchair versus this guy with one arm. And if there were other injuries going on, all of those, it's really it's impressive because it's much more challenging than just coaching a standard class.
You have to be much more well versed in, and I'm pretty sure Alec, I'm pretty sure this is a staple of that course is they really dive into movement function, which is one of the things that we'd want to vary when we're looking at all of the facets of programming, but it's largely overlooked. When we talk about function, we're talking about the functions like pulling versus pushing, hip mediated versus shoulder mediated, function of like what plane are we moving in? Is it frontal plane? Is it sagittal plane? Things of that nature. So, you really have to understand the function of movements if you're going to work with adaptive athletes, because it's not going to be a standard scale, right? I'm going to have to think like 2 or 3 levels deeper than that in order to create something for this adaptive athlete that still potentially fits function, and then understanding that I might just have to switch it all together. Like I might not be able to get that function based on what this athlete is dealing with.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's really what we have to be thinking about. I think that's often overlooked when it comes to any injury. Sometimes someone hurts their arm, and it very quickly becomes, all right, we're not going to press anymore. Where it's like, no, the workout calls for a push press. Do it with one arm, or both arms are hurt. Well, we often think, well, you can't go overhead, but a push press is a hip hip driven movement. What can we do?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it's a box jump instead. Maybe it's a partial squat. You have to really think about the function of the movement, not just what the outcome is going to be.
I'll give you a pretty solid example. So actually, yesterday I had an athlete who submitted, and this is something that a lot of affiliators deal with, and it's very much a struggle and it's frustrating. Somebody gets injured, and typically it's not even in the gym. So this person got a stress fracture in their ankle running, not at our facility. So they submit a cancellation form. They're like, "Oh, I can't come into the gym, and I'm transferring in 2 months anyway, so I'm just going to cancel." I said, "Come in, let's chat about it." And she's like, "Well, I just can't work out." And I said, what was the diagnosis? She said, "It's a stress fracture and I have to be in this boot until they tell me to get out." And I said, "You can still work out." And she's like, "Well, I don't know how." And I said, "That's my job. Of course you don't know how. You're not a trainer." I said, I was like, "I'll give you a couple examples right now. If you were clearly you're not going to run, we're going to put you on the bike. You're going to bike with one leg and two arms on the assault bike. If you're going to be on the rower, you either put your foot on a skateboard, or we have one of those little, I forget what they're called, but it's like just slides on the floor. You use them for like ab stuff most of the time." I said, "If you're going to press overhead, we'll just put your, depending on what we're doing, I'll just put your knee on a box. You just press off of a bent knee." When I ruptured my Achilles, that was the heaviest strict press I ever did to this day, because I didn't have anything else to do. I was just strict pressing all the time just to get training in. So
And there's plenty of data science and articles out there that prove if you're injured, one of the best things you can do is train because it actually speeds up the rate of recovery, but also the muscles that you're not moving. So your left shoulder is banged up. If you press with the right arm, you're actually using a lot of stabilizer muscles and other things on the left side that help you continue to make progress.
and the other thing that's interesting about that is a lot of people who have no training background, who have not done any kind of more like traditional gym training, like bodybuilding type stuff, are and there's more and more people like this who are only familiar with compound movements, or only familiar with what we would consider like bilateral movements, like using both legs simultaneously or both arms, where there's a lot of value to doing single arm, single leg work. And for a lot of people that get injured, this is their first introduction to that, where that should be sprinkled in your programming anyway, because that can help alleviate imbalances. It can help, in a lot of instances, those are the corrective protocols for people that have pelvic issues, whether it's pelvic shift or pelvic tilt or shoulder issues, where they have this weird shoulder where they're like, one shoulder's riding higher than the other one, like all that kind of stuff. It's all single arm, single leg work. And for people who have never dealt with that, now they're exposed to this whole other world of like, I can still get a really good training session in without using all of my limbs.
Yeah, I think that's really important as a box owner, if you're listening, or just a coach, and explaining to the athletes the importance of it. And it's, of course, important for you to lead by example. Everyone will have an injury when it comes to, training. And it's whether or not you continue to train when you have that injury.
And the big takeaway is, from a business standpoint, this is how you just start to develop confidence from your members in you, because that girl did not cancel her membership. I was like, I'll see you tomorrow. Come in. She's like, what am I gonna do? I'm like, I'll take care of it. That's my job. Just show up. I'll tell you what to do. And because people assume that they can't do anything. And if you don't reach out and pull them in and say, no, you're not canceling your membership, then they're just going to cancel. The number of people that would prefer that you tell them no is actually much higher than you think.
Yeah, they just don't know any better. They're just doing what they think they're supposed to do. So it's all about you educating them. Now, going back to the workout at Hammer Driven Fitness, what else did you pick up from that? For me, it was just a matter of understanding, wow, this is really hard to do in a wheelchair because there's so much you don't think about. The chair's moving, you're unstable, you're mostly hinging at the hip over and over again, as well as just the way it impacted my body. I remember my lower back just being lit up because I was using it in such a different way. What did you pick up from that?
A lot of the same stuff. It's just the attention to movement goes up significantly because I have to concentrate so much more. I think because I did the workout, I forget what the workout was, like back squat, rowing, and something else. What else was there? Double
Well,
unders?
we did a back squat workout, and then the workout was
Had
rowing
back
and
squat
double
in it.
unders.
No, it had back squat in it too.
Oh, that's right, because I had to change the movement. Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you did like a slam ball or something, I think. But
that's what I did. I did a slam ball.
the
And again, talking about that, like every time you throw the ball down, the chair was flying. So I had to think about, how am I going to throw this ball down so the chair didn't move as far?
mhm. And so for me, the attention I had to give to my movement, like something, for most CrossFitters, a 135 back squat in a workout is not something I have to spend a ton of mental resources on. I get it on my back and I start squatting. But I mean, I really had to slow down and pay attention to that. Otherwise, I mean, like, it was going to be an unsafe scenario for not just me, anybody who was in 12-foot distance of me, because that barbell was going to go flying somewhere. So yeah, it was very challenging. And like I said, the row was challenging. And then I did a single arm battle rope for the double unders.
That's
And
right.
that was, and I've played around with battle ropes and stuff like that. Not a ton. So that was a different stimulus that I hadn't really had in a while. And then doing it single arm was very different. Like, again, like you've already addressed it, like stabilizing when you're doing anything on one side of the body. Well, that's why dumbbells are so hard. You know, it's different, which again creates variance.
Yeah, and again, going back to, give Steph some kudos. She had to think about all the different ways we were going to adapt that workout. Imagine if you didn't know. I mean, she didn't know two people were going to show up with injuries. So you have to be prepared for that. I highly recommend checking out the adaptive course with our buddies Alec and Stouty and a bunch of other people. But I mean, because that's really the direction CrossFit's going. We need to show everybody in the world anyone can do this. I mean, you and I are heading to HQ next month to work with the, what do they refer to those guys as,
Underserved population.
the underserved population, and that's, typically a little overweight and pre-diabetic, and
And really
if
old. Like it's basically like, I was talking to a guy here earlier. It's kind of like, I mean, if you were to put it in a bucket, it's just like kind of like, and not to be offensive, but it's like the old and fat group, right? Like people
yeah,
who are severely overweight and very old. And we don't mean old like you're in your 60s. We mean old like you're in your 80s and 90s, because that's just some of the people they have at HQ right now, and people who are hundreds with an S pounds overweight.
Yeah, I mean, I think Coach Glassman referred to them as, fat and old, like you just did. But it's the same principle. If you're doing this these days and you want your box to grow and be successful, these are the people you need to touch.
And that's good content. Like there's a guy here doing a video right now for Beyond the Whiteboard at my gym, but that's the kind of stuff you want to be thinking about with regard to like showcasing and creating confidence that otherwise people will have negations about. They're like, I can't do CrossFit because they think CrossFit is Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, and I've seen it happen in my boxes. Like when you get into one community, everyone just comes in. Like, that person in a wheelchair knows other people in a wheelchair. They're all going to be coming into your box.
I mean, you guys will see it at News River in the dropping in episode. I don't know how many adaptive athletes John has at his gym, but it is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like everyone was adapting in
There was
in the
probably
class. I'm not being.
15 to 20 people in that class, and I would say minimum of 40% of them were adaptive in some way, whether it was, MS, CP, small stature. There was a couple
That was
other.
me. That was me.
Yeah, that was you, small stature. What was the other one?
Well, someone was missing an arm.
I don't know if it was missing an arm. It might have been
Yeah,
missing. There
the
was an
woman.
issue. Tippy is her name, but it's not missing an arm. There was an accident there, I believe. But anyway, you
Yeah,
know,
and there's that.
significant, like what most people would maybe freak out about if they walked in and that was the group of athletes that they had to now coach.
Yeah, and kudos to John as well. He did a great job. I mean, obviously it's his community. He knows them, but he set it up for them to adapt. And it wasn't it was what, box step ups and devil's press or something. So
Yeah.
it was a hard workout to think about. Well, all right, we've talked about hammer driven. Any other sentiments or thoughts about our experience there?
It was fun, man, and and Steph does a good job of keeping things light. And if you haven't listened to to our most recent episode about entertaining, go back and listen to it. It is important, and I do think there are some times when you kind of have to throw caution to the wind with regard to the timeline eventually. Like we had a good time there, and that's what's important. That's why people come back. More so because they're having a good time. This morning, the 9 a.m. class, like I don't know how it came up, but I consciously made a decision. I was like, I am gonna punt this whiteboard brief because the discussion that's happening right now about playlists and what people would put as their kind of like run out song is better than the whiteboard. And for me, the whiteboard brief, it was about deadlifts, 5 doubles. I'm like, I can brief that in 30 seconds, probably 10. Let's just bullshit for 4 minutes, have a good time, and I'll make it up somewhere else. And that conversation continued for another 20 minutes through the general warm up, through the specific warm up, into the heavy lifting session, because everybody's just doing it. Like, so don't forget that, like just because, there are challenges presented in the class doesn't mean it can't be fun. Like pick that. If that stuff is happening, people are smiling, like, man, just throw more gas on that and let that fire burn. I think it's super important to not lose sight of that. Is like, yeah, we're there to coach and we're there to make people move better, but you don't have to do it at the expense of fun and people having a good time, whether they're fully functional or whether they're adaptive. It can still be fun, and it's our job to make that happen. So again, it's like about being prepared. Like think about if you were doing a rowing workout and you had a chaired athlete, like what would you do? Like just think about it. You probably come up with something. At the bare minimum, you're going to Google it and find a YouTube video that shows you that you can break the rower in half and figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, going back to any episode we've had with an adaptive athlete on, the one thing they always reiterate is just ask, just talk to us. So if you do have an adaptive athlete come into your box, ask them, hey, what can you do? What do you like to do? What do you think would work for this? Don't be afraid to ask. They have a lot more experience with it than you do.
And in my experience, I don't know how yours is, Jay, but like they tend to bring a lighter mood most of the time
Yeah,
to the
I think
environment. It's
they
the opposite of what you think it's going to be.
Well, yeah, I think they realize, hey, this is a unique experience for the coach. They, they're not used to this. Let me make it as palatable and easy for them as possible. And part of that is let's have a good attitude about it.
Yeah. And I think that's super important. And maybe they're not that person, but you might have to force the issue about making sure they feel like it's not a big deal that they're there. Because like, again, we'll use my example yesterday because it's fresh in my mind. She was legitimately worried about impeding the class. I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, this is a non-issue. And I'm going to have to, and listen, as an affiliate owner of 10 years, I'm still having that fight. And you're going to have that fight. Like, it's not going away. People don't know what they don't know. Remember, somebody's on their first day when you're on year 10, and you can't lose sight of that.
Absolutely. Well, shout out to all the boxes that had us, but shout out on this episode to Steph and Hammer Driven Fitness. We had a great time. We learned a lot. And hopefully, if you check out the episode over at our YouTube channel, you'll learn a lot.
Yep. Also, if you guys have questions, we get a lot of them on there. Check out the affiliate programming on Wodify and SugarWod too.
Yeah, and we're going to post those links. And if you have any questions on anything we do, hit us up. We've had some great episodes lately, and most of them are coming from your questions, your topics that we get your emails. Hey, can you please discuss this? Or I'm experiencing this. So keep emailing us, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com. I do my best to get back to you, and we store those emails away for future episodes. So please let us know if there's anything we can do to help you develop as a coach. And that's it for today, Fern.
All right. See you, little buddy.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day, and thanks again to our special guest. We appreciate all you guys do for us with Best Hour of Their Day when it comes to sharing our posts on Instagram, when it comes to subscribing to us on YouTube, when it comes to the constant feedback. We are grateful and we appreciate it. We are trying to build a community based on coaching development and becoming the best version of yourself. And it goes without saying that we couldn't do without all of you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Season 1 of Dropping In is out. We are getting tremendous feedback and we'd love for you to check it out. Leave us a comment on there. Head over to our Instagram. Give us a follow. Like our pictures. Feel free to share anything that resonates with you. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback for us, please don't hesitate. Email us, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com. Thanks again. Until the next episode, we hope you've had the best hour of your day.